welcome back to Market Over Time here on Schwab Network. I'm Nicole Petallides. Crypto adoption and AI growth have been among the top market themes so far in 2025. Our guest today is a figure at the center of both industries. Let's welcome him in Mike Novogratz, founder and CEO of Galaxy. Galaxy Digital, listed on the NASDAQ and the ticker symbol GLXY. Thank you so much for being with us.
Excited to be here.
So excited to speak with you. You have such a rich history in the National Guard, a family office, Goldman Sachs, a wrestler, a competitive wrestler in college, and of course Galaxy Digital. So I'll work backwards because right now we have been in a wild time. We've had volatility. Why Galaxy? Why now? GLXY.
Well, listen, I started Galaxy. I'd been at Fortress Investments. Matter of fact, Fortress went public here on the New York Stock Exchange. It was one of the best days of my life. That was 19 years ago. So being here brought back a lot of memories. I left Fortress. I was running a family office, and I thought I'd only go back to work if I could do three things: work with young people, learn something new, and have something to offer. And even back then, I sensed that this crypto thing was going to be much bigger than most people thought. And a lot of young people. I was learning venture investing. And we thought we'd set up Galaxy as a bridge between kind of the crazy Wild West crypto world and the institution world that I'd come from, both Goldman Sachs and Fortress. Right. Really, kind of core institutions. And so that's what we did. And I had this catchphrase: the herd is coming, institutions are coming. And I was way early. It took a long time for the institutions to come. But we're at this moment, literally, where institutions are here. The new administration has done a 180 on where the old administration was for crypto. And so it's unleashing lots of pent-up creativity, lots of pent-up demand, lots of pent-up energy. And we're going to see the financial architecture, both of the US and abroad, and quite frankly, the consumer architecture, infrastructure change really quickly.
I think about that. I saw something when you said when crypto was selling off in a big way, you thought maybe people might lose interest. And that's when you really knew the herd was coming, because they were still buying in even when there was a huge sell-off in Bitcoin or the like,
well,
right?
It was interesting. The first major sell-off I experienced in crypto was way back, 2018. The markets went down 98%. I mean, you can't understand what 98% means. Right. It basically just disappeared. Bitcoin didn't do as bad as the rest, but most of the other coins just disappeared. And what surprised me was people, young, smart people kept coming in and
right.
joining. And they were building out what they see as a revolution. At the ethos of crypto, it came from the fact that people lost trust after 2008, the financial crisis. And if you think about the world since 2008, we're in a bear market in trust. And the bear market in trust started in 2008, then we had the European financial crisis, right. We had Brexit, we had Trump being elected the first time, and now we've got riots in LA and people fighting with ICE and a war in Israel and Iran. And if you look at 8 different indicators of trust by the Pew organization or Gallup, right. They're all headed lower. People don't trust institutions, and that's what gave crypto its reason to be. And so it's been a 15-year buildup of that, and here we are now with a real industry. It's $4 trillion plus. We've got Bitcoin as a macro asset on almost everyone's dashboard now. When Larry Fink started talking about getting BlackRock into Bitcoin, it was the snowball rolling downhill. And so Bitcoin is digital gold. We've got stablecoins. You saw Circle did an IPO. As payments, that's going to continue to be a big industry. And then the rest, we're going to have tokenization of equities, tokenization of bonds, tokenizations of CDOs, tokenizations of other assets.
You don't want to miss it. Sounds like you don't want to miss it.
Crypto's
and the
here.
fact that the young people were on board, those that had been studying and understood what DeFi is, maybe getting away from the fiat currency, looking into crypto assets as a way, is it a way of humanity around the world to change the, what's behind the revolution, and why did you want to make sure to be a part of it?
So there are two things. One was a Bitcoin story, which was we don't trust governments
Right.
with managing their finances. Listen, Donald Trump and then Joe Biden and now Donald Trump have raised our national debt more than the rest of the presidents combined, right?
Right.
And so governments are tending towards populism here and abroad, and populist governments don't like to save money, they like to spend money.
Right.
You want free college loans, let's give them free college loans, let's wipe off student debt, let's spend more on the military, let's have a parade. All of this stuff costs money. And so when you're spending more than you're saving, your currency depreciates. And so that was the Bitcoin story.
Sure.
That was a really easy story.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have gone in full time as an industry if it was just Bitcoin. What's really interesting about the rest of crypto, these decentralized platforms, which we haven't seen work yet, to be honest, right? They're close. Now they're fast enough and safe enough, and now we're going to have regulation that allows them, is that the ability to have peer-to-peer transfer of value. And so you're going to see it in ticketing, you're going to see it in social media, you're going to see it in finance, lending, this
Right.
idea of decentralized stuff. It's been in a sandbox till now, and it's about to move out of the sandbox and into the real world.
So let's talk about price targets here for, Bitcoin right now, when we see it at 110,000, it certainly has held through some real volatile times. We saw a collapse in the crypto world. It sort of held. The NASDAQ has sold off. It held. It's done well in comparison to gold. It's really been a form that people have begun to trust more. You have ETFs for Bitcoin, and Ethereum, and Solana, and so on are all gaining in popularity. But would you buy this for your kids and your grandkids? Because at 100,000, does it go to 200,000? Does it go to 500,000?
So listen, it's not going to go to $1 million overnight, but if you think that Bitcoin has become digital gold, and it really has.
It has.
What's interesting
Okay.
with Bitcoin is the value comes from the social construct. I say it has value, you say it has value, therefore it has value. There are not that many things in the world, right? Currencies are like that, gold is like that. It's valued because we think it is. There are enough people that now think it's valuable. So the price moves on two metrics. One is adoption. More and more people being introduced to it. We
Right.
call it orange pilling them, right? Somebody orange pilled Larry Fink. That was a big deal because now you got all BlackRock engaged. In Invesco, our partners engaged.
Yeah.
And more financial institutions are engaged. The other is the macro backdrop, which I think continues to be government spending too much money. And so how do I think Bitcoin can go to $1 million? Well, gold is roughly a $20 trillion asset and Bitcoin's roughly a $2 trillion asset. So at one point, we had, Warren Buffett retired, Charlie Munger passed away. They didn't like Bitcoin. They're not Bitcoin people. But I bet you their grandkids are.
Right.
Kids like digital stuff.
Yeah.
And
I
as
do.
we have this wealth transfer from baby boomers who are all, rest their souls, going to slowly pass away.
Yes.
And that money gets passed down, they're going to be more willing to buy Bitcoin than gold.
Yeah, there's going to be the generational wealth transfer that is due now from those babies.
Ginormous.
It's huge. And you're right. I would say a lot of the younger folks who are interested in Bitcoin are going to have newfound wealth, and they're going to put it to work because they believe that it will go to $1 million. So
And I think
guess-
gold's going higher as well.
And you think gold
I think
goes
gold could go
higher
from
too,
3,000 to 10,000. Not this year, but
Right.
I don't see how the governments are going to get themselves out of this spending problem.
And then meantime, I will say, the store of value for Bitcoin, you put in the wallet, and people say as it grows, it really will have more and more value. There's still always the naysayers who say, right now everybody believes in it. There could be some sort of something that goes on social media, the whole world changes their opinion, and then they don't believe in it. And that's sort of one fear people have, and you can address that. The second is quantum, and the momentum of quantum computing. And I've heard that maybe in 5 years, it can break down everybody's passwords and all this. And, so there are still those.
So it's interesting.
Those naysayers.
Anyone
What do
who's
you
in
say to them?
Bitcoin has been asked about quantum from the start. And unless you're a computer science guru, you've got to rely on them. What the smartest guys around the space tell me,
Yeah.
and I tend to believe them because why not?
Right.
Is that as you get quantum resistant. And so that they're not really worried that, yes, when we get quantum computing, it can open any password.
to anything. So it's not just your Bitcoin
But,
holder, it could be
but
anything.
the Bitcoin engineers are fast at work already at creating the quantum resistant code.
Right. Okay.
And so,
Good.
again, I wish I was that smart, and we will see. But that's, there's people with a ton of money, with a ton more intellect than I have, that have looked at this and are sleeping like babies.
But you've certainly provided the way to facilitate and bring traditional finance and digital assets together with Galaxy Digital. I mean, that's really
Listen,
been...
we set up Galaxy originally as a crypto company. Now it's a holding company with two companies. We have a data center business, which is booming and big, and probably represent at least half the value of the company. And we have this crypto company, which I think is a great company now with the potential to be spectacular. And when I say the potential to be spectacular, most of crypto hasn't happened yet, right? It's been in the sandbox. We don't have decentralized rideshare, or we don't have a huge decentralized finance business. It's growing fast. I think in the next 5 years, you're going to see it explode. And that's what we're set up for.
So yeah, because I got a question from a guru in the crypto world, and he noted that you were fully immersed and very focused with Galaxy, saying you built up a pretty big digital asset investment bank and an AI data center campus, and which part you're most focused on and expects to grow the fastest. What will grow? People want to know what part of Galaxy will grow the fastest.
I have 4 kids, and I love them all. Right now, the easier business to see and invest in is the data center business, because there's this gigantic demand for power up until certainly to 2030 and beyond, and the power that we have access to is 2027, 28, 29.
Sure.
And so we are racing at that. It's more complicated to figure out what the map looks like in crypto and how to build the map, but I'm racing just as fast. And so we have 600 employees, about 80 are focused on the data center and 520 on the crypto business. I'm about 90% of my, 85-90% of my effort on the crypto business, and 15 on the data center, though my partner is more data center.
How about companies like MSTR, MicroStrategy, and GameStop, and all these companies that are buying large amounts of Bitcoin? It's called Strategy now. What do you think about these companies?
Listen,
do you buy into those companies?
I think Michael Saylor got in early, is unbelievably charismatic, believes everything he says, and has created MicroStrategy almost like its own crypto. While it buys Bitcoin,
so you're a fan.
Well, I think he's going to be the only one of these balance sheet companies that can keep a premium to Bitcoin, because there are just too many of the other ones, and you can buy the ETF. So unless you're bringing something beyond buying Bitcoin, like it's an accident. What we learned is people are much more comfortable still buying a stock than buying a crypto, even if the stock just owns crypto, right? But you got an ETF.
I mean, if you took 10 people on the street, most of them would say that.
Yes.
They would be more comfortable
and
to buy a stock.
Therefore, these balance sheet companies have worked.
Right.
I think if you're going to be a balance sheet company that is sustainable, you're going to have to bring something else to the table. And Michael's brought leverage. He's brought a different approach to bringing capital markets into crypto.
Right.
I think that might give him a shot to keep his premium to Bitcoin longer than others. But
because of his early adoption and who he is and the way he built it.
MicroStrategy is like a crypto. The thing about crypto that changed the way people invest is because there was this breakdown of trust in the world. Crypto brought this idea of community as a valuation metric, right? Bitcoin's whole value comes from its community.
I really hope it stays like that for all those crypto investors.
And so, who knows how long community can last. Right now it's but you see it in Palantir, right?
It's beautiful. Palantir's up 500% in a year or so.
But it's a community.
Incredible.
And so you've seen this idea of community. You could call it mnemonic value, right? Like GameStop was a meme stock, it was a community stock. And so I don't know, it's made valuation harder. What I think is going to happen now in crypto, thank God, is because we're going to have a regulatory environment and a legislative clarity around
Right.
tokens, you're going to have tokens that feel more understandable to most people. Until now, most of the tokens have their value just from community. So it's a narrative story that brings people into the tent.
So at this point now, and the million, you can't say when the million comes. I mean,
No.
would you say within the decade?
Yes, within the decade,
You're okay with that?
100%.
Ethereum, not Bitcoin, totally different value propositions. They are. Should people be holding both?
Yes, and it's a different narrative and a different function, but the same value proposition.
But yes, they should have Ethereum.
They
as
should
well.
have Ethereum. Listen, Ethereum is the second largest crypto ecosystem. It is by far the dominant ecosystem where people are building on top of. More stable coins will trade on Ethereum, more projects are being built on Ethereum. It's got competition, lots
Right.
of it. If you look at Ethereum's value though, it comes from the community. It's money, right? You're not gonna be worth $480 billion or whatever,
Right.
Ethereum, more than that now, if it's not money. It's money. And so, just like Bitcoin, it's a store of value. The narrative that draws people to Bitcoin is digital gold. The narrative that draws people to Ethereum is it is building the base layer of trust, this shared database that people are going to trust to build things on top of.
Should they have 50% of their money in crypto? 100% of their money in
No,
crypto?
absolutely not.
I mean, what would you tell someone who is 22 years old?
I think unless you're working in the
portfolio look
industry
like?
and it's your full-time shtick, you know, a 15% allocation to crypto is a great allocation.
And what else should be in that portfolio for a
You
young
should have-
person?
You should have some gold and silver.
Okay.
You should have equities, right? In a high inflation environment or a debased, equities do well.
Right.
Equities have been an amazing investment. I think they're a little rich at this point, but you can't keep them down. You probably should have some real estate, right? It's the one asset you can borrow against from the government early on in your career. So like, in some ways, the first thing you can use to get leverage is real estate.
Right.
Right? You only get wealthy in the world by using other people's money or finding something that's so unique that it goes from 1 to 100, right? And so real estate's a great way for somebody young to start building up wealth.
And fixed income?
You know, I don't
Not so
love
hot on the
fixed
bonds right
income
now?
at this point at 4% in 10 years when I
Right.
got a government that's got 36 trillion in debt.
Okay, so you're laying off of that. Very interesting. So you had gold, silver, equities, real estate, and 15% in crypto. For AI, you've talked about AI.
Now,
and
to be
yes.
fair, I've got a lot more of my net worth in crypto than 15%. So I just want to be,
What do you
be
have?
clear.
At least in one account. In one account.
You know, if I look at it,
He's a self-made billionaire, folks. I mean, you know, you grew
it's-
up as a kid, one of 7. You know, you went and you were a pilot in the National Guard and so on, but you made it. You're a self-made billionaire. How much do you have in?
Well, if I think
percent
about
in
it, it's
your
probably
crypto?
half of my net worth in crypto at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
Another, you know, 20% in lots of diversified assets and 30% in data centers.
Right, in data centers. So let's get to the AI data center. You talk about AI and drug discovery and all these optimistic cases when it comes to AI. I mean, obviously there may be some energy concerns when it comes to these data centers, but give me a sentence on the AI revolution and where we stand and what you see AI as going forward.
I think crypto is an important industry. I think AI is more important. It is fascinating how fast it's changing and how fast it's growing. So we're building an 800 megawatt campus in Texas, which we think will expand to 2.5, 2.6 gigawatts. That alone, just the 800 megawatts, is going to be a $40, $50 billion CapEx project. There are not many $50 billion CapEx projects in the history of America, let alone galaxy building in the middle of Texas. And so it tells you the confidence that Jensen Huang and Sam Altman and Google and Amazon, Andy Jassy, have in what's coming. And so if we look at the total amount of data center being used right now for AI,
Right.
it's going to go up by multiples in the next 2 to 3 years. Already, it's replacing jobs quickly. And so I think it's going to be, here's a great stat for you. The University of Berkeley computer science graduates, BAs in comp science,
Right.
we're always 85 to 90% got jobs. Last year, only 50% got jobs. People don't need coders anymore because AI is doing it for them. And they're keeping more seasoned programmers to figure out what lane, how to fix the AI for each simple industry. And so if you are running a company or running a brokerage or running if you're an RIA and you're not using AI a little bit each day, you're making a huge mistake. It's scary in some hand because it could be a job destroyer. It could also make things so much more effective and efficient that we solve things that we never thought we could solve. And so what I'm sure of is, for the first time in my life, 7 years from here is going to look so different than today. And people say that all the time, but it never really has looked that different. Think of the car you drive, and now think of the same model 20 years ago. So let's say you have an SUV, and you had a Suburban 20 years ago.
Right.
Pretty much the same thing with a different screen. Doesn't drive much faster, doesn't handle much better. Now think of something that's 300 times better. Like, what does that even mean?
Right.
And so I think we're on this dawn of something that's so spectacular, it's hard to get your hands around.
So, and I love that, and it's exciting, and I like that, you wanted to be a part of it. You came out and said, I'm doing Galaxy Digital. I want to be around young people. I want to make a difference. I want to be learning and evolve with society and bring it forward. And you're talking about this data center here in Texas that is huge, and you're finding the people who want to be a part of it, which is incredible.
The interesting thing about the data center is kind of the base level of what AI needs to build. Then on top of that, right, then CoreWeave comes in, and NVIDIA, they put all the chips in and they build the brain, and people then program on top of that. I think we're in the lowest risk piece of it, and the only one I'm smart enough to do. The guys that are building this stuff, they're different level intelligence and expertise, and then the brain's going to build itself.
What are you going to tell your kids' kids to study? If everybody who is studying computer science or all these things that were extremely difficult, so what do you tell young people to do so that they have jobs in the future?
So this is going to, I'm a liberal arts major. I got 4 kids that are liberal arts majors, and I always said, you need to learn to read, to write, to think, most importantly, to communicate, to be a critical thinker. And I think that package of talents, of skills, is going to be more and more important, because predicting what job is going to work is almost impossible.
Right.
And so listen, it's going to be very hard. I think when I really think about it from a macro perspective, our future will have universal basic income in it. We are going to have to give more people money. Listen, we have a huge rich-poor gap already. And as we replace workers with robots, as we replace knowledge workers with computers, we're going to go. And so being a sociologist so much, understanding how we're going to, how humans are going to organize themselves in a world where computers are smarter than humans is really going to be a challenge.
Let's turn back to the stablecoin story, the regulatory environment. We have things moving forward, even in Washington now. I'm sure you've worked with the past administration, this administration. Also, if we are to move forward with that, that would actually preserve the US dollar a little more too, right? I mean, because it would be backed by the US dollar. So stablecoin, you believe in it? What kind of stablecoins, and what about the US dollar?
So listen, it's imperative that the US dollar remains strong, right? The dollar is backed by the greatest military the world's ever seen. That's what backs the dollar. That's what gives you the reserve currency status. Being the reserve currency allows you to run 35 trillion in debt. And so it's very dangerous to say we want to weaken the dollar, because people might take you literally.
Right.
It was very dangerous for President Trump to come out and say Canada should be the 51st state, and these guys are here to kiss my butt, and all of these things, because we actually need people to want to own the dollar. Now, they still do because of NVIDIA and Google and our great companies, but we don't want to chase them away. Having a stable coin is essential because more and more people are moving on online. And so traditionally, if you lived in Nigeria and you were worried about their currency, you had $100 bills stuffed in your pillowcase. Right? That pillowcase is now going to be a digital wallet. And I would rather have that Nigerian own a stable coin, keeping his wealth, funding our deficit, the Chinese funding our deficit, that are taking their money out of China, than a renminbi stablecoin. And so I was in DC over and over screaming that we need this. We need to keep the US dollar dominant, that we should actually allow people that want to take their money out of China and put it in the US to do it, not to be so concerned of why, just take it.
Right. Okay.
When we move into an AI world, when you say to your AI agent, who you're going to call Billy, buy my groceries, and I'm on I'm on a low carb diet, that agent is going to not send a email to JP Morgan saying, here's my ABA number and account, please wire it to. An AI agent is going to send a stable coin over a digital rail to another AI agent. And so the money of the AI world is going to be crypto.
And last but not least, your daily routine, your things that you count on the daily, is it, when you get up in the morning, just a glimpse into the life of, Mike Novogratz, who's like, made it. You were one of 7 kids. Your father was an incredible football player. You played in college. You were a wrestler, and so on, and went to Goldman, and went on and did all these things in Princeton. Now what? Now at this, after having 3 publicly traded companies that you've been a part of, now what? What is your daily routine today, generally?
Well, it's supposed to be. I wake up at 6 o'clock, and my trader buzzes at 6:20, and we work out 6:30 to 7:30 in Hudson River Park. We do that about 2 to 3 days a week, not the 5 we're supposed to, because he either oversleeps or I oversleep.
That's funny. Okay, good. That's good.
Then I walk to work. I usually call Paul Tudor Jones as my first call, because I've been doing it for 30 years, and touch base on markets.
Incredible conversations, I'm sure.
I call other guys in the market. I talk to my desk. I go through a whole bunch of charts. And so I'm a macro thinker first, and I do that roughly till 9:30, 10 o'clock when the market opens. And then I pivot to being a CEO. And for me, understanding the world and being a macro thinker, gives me the context I do everything within. And it gives me, like when I go meet people, it's what I can offer. And they offer me something back, right? That's how you make relationships in business, right? It's not one-sided. People want to talk to me because they think I know something about at least the macro world, and now the crypto world, and a little bit the data center world, right? And so the more you learn, again, that's how your information arsenal grows. And I always tell the young people that work for me, look at your classmates in this intern class. Look at the classmates in your analyst class. In 10 years, those guys are going to be all over the place. Get to know them. Find the smart ones. Take them to lunch. And that network, but you got to offer the network something.
It's so great to have you on. Sounds like you're always learning, always listening, and growing, and still part of the young crowd. So you stay young to yourself.
Only way to stay young.
You'll come back and you'll give us some updates, I hope, Mike. It's so great to see you. Best to you and your family and the Galaxy Digital team. Thank you, Mike Novogratz, founder and CEO of Galaxy. That does it for this episode of Market Overtime. You'll find our full library of past clips. Be sure to subscribe to Schwab Network's YouTube page. I'm Nicole Petallides. Thanks for watching.